What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Victoria, and in today's video I'll be showing you how to stitch a bustier top with yoke. I have a tutorial on how to draft out this pattern. I'll be leaving the link in the description, so be sure to see that video before watching this one. For this project I'll be using this white, not really white, sort of creamy, shiny, transparent lace. This is what I used to create my civil wedding gown, and I used this pattern for that, so I'm just going to be recreating that for you guys. Apart from the lace, I'll also be using this cream silk fabric and some white lining. So using the pattern, I've gone ahead to cut out the pieces that I'll be needing to create this bustier. I have one piece for the center front which was cut on a fold, and I did the same for the silk material and the lining. While for the side fronts, I cut out two pieces with their right sides facing each other, and the same thing was done for the silk and the lining as well. You can see that when cutting out these pieces, I left half an inch that I'll be using to join the pieces together. I also gave half an inch allowance along the neckline and the armhole. And then along the sides, I gave 1.5 inch for my sewing allowance. For the yoke, I have one single piece cut from the lace because I want that part to be transparent. And I gave half an inch allowance all around. So now these are the pieces that will be used for the front, and the back is just going to be a simple basic bodice. And I have two pieces for the lace, silk and the lining. So now it's time to start assembling all these pieces together, and I'll be starting with the front. And the first thing to do is to place the lace on the right side of the silk. This means I'm placing the wrong side of the lace to the right side of the silk. And in order for it to stay in place and not move around so much, I'm going to be adding some hemming gum, just like this, and then I'll place the lace back on top of it. I'll make sure it's arranged properly, after which I'm going to be pressing this down, that way the lace sticks to the silk. So the same thing I did on the center piece, I'll be doing to the side pieces as well. I'll separate the side pieces, place the hemming gum on the right side, and then bring in the lace and place properly on top of this. Doing this will just make things a whole lot easier for me when it's time to start stitching, because the lace will be stuck to the silk and everything will be just much easier to handle. So when I'm all done, I'll just take these three pieces and give it a good press. So I've done that, and here's how it's looking. You can see that the lace is not moving around because it's stuck to the silk, which is what we want. I'm just going to set this aside and work on the lining. For the lining, I'm going to be fusing it with some interfacing just to give it a bit of strength. So here's how it looks after adding the interfacing. You can see that it has more weight. So I'm going to set this aside and then bring back the main fabric. So now it's time to stitch these pieces together. And before I start stitching this together, I'm going to be padding it with some wadding. So starting with the center piece, I'm going to be placing it on top of the wadding like so. You can see that I'm not placing the entire center piece on the wadding. I'm starting from the underbust. So I'll just go ahead to cut the wadding following the shape of the center piece. So this is how it looks like. When it's time to stitch, I'm going to be bringing the wadding down by about half an inch to allow me attach the yoke. Now for the side pieces, I'm going to be folding the wadding, and then I'm going to be placing one of the pieces on top of it. Again, I'm not placing the entire piece on the wadding. I'm just going to start cutting from the underbust. So I'm going to be cutting out the wadding following the shape of the side piece. I'll also open up the fold because we'll be needing two pieces, one for each side. So this is how the wadding is going to be placed. And just like I did for the center piece, I'm going to be taking away half an inch from the top to allow me attach my yoke easily. If not, that part is just going to be too thick and a bit difficult to stitch. Padding with a wadding is quite simple because all I have to do is place the shiny part of the wadding to the wrong side of my pieces, and I'm just going to iron it properly and the wadding will stick to the material. So I'll just take these three pieces and give it a good press, and when I'm done with it, this is how it looks. You can see that it's stuck to the material. So now that I'm done padding, it's time to join the pieces together. So I'm just going to be pinning down the pieces like so, starting from the bottom all the way to the top. And when I stitch that down and turn it over to the right side, it's going to look like this. So I'm going to be stitching down the two pieces together using a ½ inch sewing allowance. And of course, I'll do the same for the other side as well. So when stitching this down, make sure to take your time to arrange the pieces so that they match each other. It's not straight, so you have to keep following the curve. So I've stitched on one side, and when I turn it to the right side, this is how it looks. You see how nice it's looking. I'll do the same for the other side as well. So guys, I'm done stitching, and here's what we have. So the next thing I'll be doing is to notch from the under bust all the way to the top, just to ease the seam, and I'll do the same for the other side as well. I'm also going to press the seams open, and when it comes to the seams on the bust, you can use a breast ball for that. So guys, this is how it looks on the right side. So now I'm just going to iron this and then show you what it looks like. So I'm done pressing, and all the seams are wide open, and here's how it's looking. So whatever I did on the main fabric, I did to the lining piece as well, as you can see. So now I'm going to bring in the yoke, and the first thing I'm going to do is to finish off the neckline using a bias tape. So I'm just going to do this like I normally would. I'll take this to the machine and turn the neckline using my bias. So I've done that, and here's how it looks. You can see how nice it is. So now that I'm done with the neckline for the yoke, it's time to bring in the rest of the bodice, and we're going to be attaching the yoke to the bodice like so. I'm going to be placing the right side of the yoke to the right side of the bodice, just like this. And then starting from the center front, I'm going to be sewing all the way to the end of the yoke, and I'll do the same to the other side as well. And I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance for this. So when sewing this, just take your time. Make sure the yoke is aligned to the bodice properly, and just take your time to sew from the center front, following the sweetheart shape all the way to the end of one side, and do the same for the other side as well. So I'm done attaching the yoke, and here's how it's looking. This will look much better after I've given it a good press, but before that, we're going to be attaching the lining piece to this as well. So I'm just bringing the yoke, the right side of the yoke, back to the right side of the bodice, and then I'm placing the right side of the lining on top of this, as you can see. I'll go ahead to pin along that area, and then take this to the machine and stitch from one end to another using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. That way, when I'm done stitching and I flip over the lining, the inside is going to have a nice finish as well. So I'll just take this to the machine and stitch on a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. This means that I'm stitching over the first stitch that I made. So guys, I've done that. Now I'll go ahead and make small notches all around that area just to ease the seam. And then I'm going to open it up like so and run a top stitch on the lining piece. This will help everything stay flat and prevents the lining from coming up. So just take your time and top stitch on the lining from one end to another. So after top stitching, this is what we have. Now all I have to do is finish off the sides, and I'll do that by bringing out the right side of the lining piece towards the right side of the main fabric, just like this, and then I'm going to stitch down each side using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So I've done that, and now I'm just going to flip this back to the right side, and yeah, that's basically how you stitch a bustier top with yoke. It doesn't look very flat now, but by the time you attach this top to the skirt and then join this front piece to the back along the shoulder line, everything is going to sit nicely. So for the back, it's going to be pretty straightforward because the back is just a simple basic bodice. You just have to place the lace on top of the silk, use a hemming gum to hold everything in place, and then finish off the neckline, the side, and the center back with your lining. You can decide to create your back piece with a yoke as well. I have a corset tutorial that shows you how to do that. So that's it, you guys. That's how to stitch a bustier top with yoke. I hope you find this tutorial helpful. If you watched to the end, thank you so much. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in my next video.